Hello and welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. My name is Chris Crawford. I am joined by my buddy Drew Silva. Today's show, we're going to be looking at hitter category. We're going to take a look at some sneaky, might not be the right words, but maybe some unheralded players that can help you in the major categories. But before we get into that, let's get into some headlines. And we got some good news about literally one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Mike Trout began hitting against a pitching machine on Friday. Trout's just only going to face machine-thrown breaking balls initially, but then he's going to advance to high-velocity stuff, work his way back. Of course, he has missed a bunch of time with this hamate bone fracture out since early July. They're hoping that they can put a ETA on things based on how things are going, which I think is a positive sign. He was playing really well prior to this as well. So this would be a wonderful thing to see. Drew, I just want to see Mike Trout playing baseball games.
Yeah, just those machine thrown breaking balls for now.
Mm-hmm.
The robots are taking over, Chris. But yeah, I mean, they're kind of like the Angels are kind of shying away from putting an exact timetable on this, but they've said once he is able to hit against contact, once he's able to take contact swings and, they turn the velocity up on the pitching machine and he can face fastballs and his surgically repaired wrist responds well to all of that. It's going to be go time. It'll be a quick process from there. Maybe a little minor league rehab stint, or the Angels could just bring him right back if the simulated at bats go smoothly. Either way, yeah, once he is discomfort free with those contact swings, it's going to be a swift process. So maybe I would say best case scenario, he returns next weekend. That seems like a reasonable best case scenario given what we know. And man, the Angels could sure use him. They're 2-8 so far in August after buying rather than selling at the trade deadline. 6.5 games back of the third AL wildcard spot. They're not going to get there.
No.
And then Shohei Ohtani is going to leave as a free agent this winter. It's a bit of a nightmare with what they gave up to get Lucas Giolito. But Trout, is certainly capable of helping the cause if they are able to somehow stage a late push and climb past 4 different teams. Definitely an uphill battle, though, especially with your Mariners refusing to lose a game. What is their win streak? Is it 8 or 9?
They are at 9 now. They've won, I believe, 10 of 11, and it comes after you absolutely destroyed their chances of making the postseason in the last podcast. So we do appreciate that. It's funny. So for those of you who don't know, I do a daily show for the Mariners. That's one of the reasons why I'm wearing. Isn't this hat sick, by the way? This is
it's great.
One of my favorite hats that I picked up in a long time. Thank you, Simply Seattle. I do this daily show, and I'm like, you can't count on these long winning streaks. You can't count on them. Yeah, it's happening again. By the way, they play Kansas City after this, so they have a chance if they can win the next 2 to get that streak back up to 14 games. But yeah, I just want to see Mike Trout playing baseball. I wanted to ask you this real quick about Mike Trout. I've tweeted this a whole bunch of times. I guess it's called posting now or whatever. If you were the Los Angeles Angels and you played in like the soccer system and you could loan Mike Trout out for these final months, wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't that be like really cool to see? Like if you're the Angels, you still have Mike Trout, you still have him for that, but you get a chance to see Mike Trout if this thing does go bad, and it's going very bad. You'd still get a chance to see Mike Trout get to play on the biggest stage. It's not maybe the same thing, but like as both of us as soccer fans, like who understand that like it doesn't have to have this type of attachment where it's like one player for one team and stuff like that. I think it would be a hoot.
It's a fun, entertaining idea. Kind of like with relegation in soccer, though. Like,
sure.
Unless it's an established part of the sport, it would be really hard to get fans on board. Like, if you're an Angels fan, would you be happy with them loaning Ohtani and Trout out to some contender for the playoffs? I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be
weird. If you're not a fan of any one team, I think it would be easier to root for, which is kind of what I am with soccer, which is why I don't really have an attachment to certain players. And it would be entertaining. It would make there already is like a big haves and have-nots problem.
Sure.
In baseball, and it would maybe even increase that. But that's the same with like the Premier League and La Liga and Bundesliga. All those leagues are kind of the same, which isn't a great thing if you're a fan of one of the have-not teams.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. Let's talk about Chris Sale, who made his return on the mound, first start since June 1st. Went pretty well. 4 2/3 innings, allows just 1 hit, does give up 2 runs because he gives up a homer, 0 walks, 7 strikeouts, 4 ground ball outs, 4 fly ball outs. I was pretty impressed with what I saw from Chris Sale. It's going to be interesting to see how much deeper he can work into games. He only threw 58 pitches in this one. I imagine that's going to keep building. But I think fantasy managers have to be really encouraged by what they saw from Sale in this outing.
Absolutely. And the Red Sox are another one of those teams that the Angels would have to surpass to get into
Right.
the American League wildcard mix. And yeah, Boston got a huge boost Friday with Sale returning and looking sharp in what was a 5-2 win over the Tigers. Didn't allow a hit until Kerry Carpenter slugged a solo homer in the top of the 5th. Then Sale hit Javier Baez, I believe it was, with a pitch, and he got pulled and then got charged with that run after being pulled, but wasn't even supposed to throw more than 4 innings, but he was so efficient. Obviously not allowing a hit and no walks is very efficient. 42 of his 58 pitches were strikes. Struck out 7 of the 16 batters he faced. Lines up to face the Nationals next time out, which is, you love seeing that on the upcoming schedule as a Sale fantasy manager. Garrett Whitlock is due back, I believe, on Sunday. He's going to return in a multi-inning relief role. We talked about that last week. Tanner Huck, maybe late next week, returning to the rotation. So the Red Sox are getting healthy for a charge, perhaps, up the AL wildcard standings, riding a 3-game winning streak into Saturday. And, it seems like we're always waiting for Sale to land back on the injured list, but if he can stay healthy over these final 7 weeks, he gives the Red Sox a much better shot, because what they've needed is pitching all year long.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, it is worth pointing out that you're going to have to take some risks with Sale. He has not been able to stay on the mound over the last few years, but when he's at his best, he's one of the best left-handed pitchers in baseball. I'm excited to see what he can do. Joseph asked a quick question here about our Ohtani discussion or our Trout discussion. Great show. Just pretending, if you guys were the GM of the Angels, who would you have gone after for Ohtani? What teams would you have traded with? I mean, I would have been really aggressive talking to Cincinnati. I think that would have made a lot of sense. I don't think Cincinnati had a whole heck of a lot of interest in that, unfortunately. Really disappointed with their deadline, because what a golden opportunity they had right now. Baltimore as well would have made, I think, a lot of sense over here. Minnesota, I think, would have made a little bit of sense. And they have a pipeline going that seems like Minnesota and Cincinnati make trades every 3 months or something like that. But yeah, I would have been aggressive for those high prospect team. I don't have a problem with what the Angels did, by the way. I think what they did was actually,
it's easier. Yeah.
And here's the thing, the hindsight thing, like you're saying, it's not like they gave up these elite prospects, Drew. They gave up back end starters and the second best catching prospect in their system. Logan O'Hoppe, I think, is that guy. I think Logan O'Hoppe is going to be the future at the position. It certainly hurt their depth, but this is not a team that had a whole heck of a lot of prospect depth anyway. And once you lose Shohei Ohtani, you're starting over anyway. You are starting from square one as soon as Shohei Ohtani leaves. And to answer your question, who do I think Ohtani's signing with in the offseason? The Mets was my thought for the beginning, but now it sounds like that's not actually going to happen. Seattle's going to be aggressive. I don't think they're actually going to be able to get there. I think the Yankees get him. The Yankees or the Giants are the two teams that I think. And look, we forget that the Giants were super close to pulling off a couple of massive contracts in this offseason. One was done, and then the medical stuff. And then Aaron Judge, a.k.a. Arson Judge, looked like he was heading on his way to San Francisco as well. I like that call. I think the Giants are a great call.
Yeah, the Giants they were among the finalists. I think they were in the top 3 for Ohtani back when he first came over from Japan. And Bobby Evans, who's now their former GM, but who was it? I think it was Alex Pavlovich. He's NB. No, it was Andrew Baggerly of The Athletic talked to Evans about it. And Evans was like, I think they're going to, if they want to do it, I mean, it's going to all come down to who gives them the biggest contract. I think that's pretty obvious. And the Yankees could kind of panic move it. And I mean, to say signing Ohtani is a panic move, but just the way that their fan base is reacting to what has been like now a full calendar year of 500 baseball.
Mediocrity. Yep.
Yeah, I could see them pushing into a out of their comfort zone with that, and maybe signing up. The Giants just actually make, I think, the most sense. Location, budget wise, like they're ready to spend. And that would be about the best guy you can spend on. It's going to be an astronomical figure.
Over under
And
600 million.
Yeah. I'm going to go over.
Me too. I'm going to say somewhere around the $75 million per year mark is what you're talking about with Shohei Ohtani. I could see 750. Just because there's never been anything like this. And he's going to be selling uniforms. He sells your product overseas. He is the thing. Like, if you're going to ever have a contract like that in baseball, I think it's going to be with a player like Shohei Ohtani. Let's go from that guy to, I want to talk about 3 rookies who all had big days yesterday. Bobby Witt Jr., Julio Rodriguez, and Wander Franco. That's a very funny split. But I think Julio Franco is still hitting baseball somewhere. I really
might
like
be. Yeah.
So. All 3 of these guys have been playing extremely well right now, Drew. So I'll just ask you this. One, if you could have just one of them, long-term and short-term, I guess, which one of the 3? And how good does that group of 3 have a chance to be? There's lots of really good rookies from the 2022 class. Like, I think this has a chance to be one of the greatest rookie classes of all time. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been saying that for a couple of years now. I liked seeing Julio back up in the leadoff spot.
Me too.
Friday, because the Mariners had to place JP Crawford on the concussion IL, and Crawford was getting on base at like a 380 clip, or is it really 390 something? Yeah, he's been really good. So that's kind of a big loss for them, but it puts Julio back up into that table setting role, which I really like. Are you talking about fantasy or real life?
Fantasy.
If I have to pick one of these.
Let's go with fantasy for now.
I'm gonna say Julio, but
it's so close.
It's really hard. It's really hard. I think Bobby Witt might actually be better in terms of like just raw counting stats. But because I don't know, the Royals offense could be okay. I don't know. Mm-hmm. They're kind of in this perpetual rebuild. I'm going to go with Julio because I don't trust that Wander Franco is going to be a 60 base stealer every year.
Sure.
I think his power will continue to get better. I trust Julio more as far as floor and even ceiling. I think I'm going to go with Julio.
Yeah, it's really close. And I think as good as Bobby Witt is, he's pretty clearly third on that list for me, which is the opposite of darning with faint praise. Like, it is the ultimate compliment to be third on that list. By the way, Michael Harris has also been just stupid good with the bat as of late and made a lot of fantasy managers feel, I think, a little dumb, because I think he was being faded by quite a few folks, and they looked right for a while, but he's just been absolutely outstanding. Looked much more comfortable since moving to the bottom of that lineup. I think I might go with Wander Franco, though, even though I love Julio Rodriguez. He's the best prospect I've ever scouted in my time of doing this. Like, just the pure ability to do everything on the field. And Julio can do that too, but Wander could do it from the shortstop position. And I do think that you have to add that in a little bit. Like, the outfield is nice for Julio as well, but it's just crazy. I was watching highlights of it, and I was thinking how blessed we are to watch baseball right now. Like, there is so much good young talent in this sport right now. And there are also guys like, oh, by the way, the greatest player I've ever seen in Shohei Ohtani. And there are guys like Aaron Judge, and there are guys like Bryce Harper. And there are just, it's unbelievable how much talent there is in baseball. And I sometimes think we maybe don't appreciate it enough. Would you agree with that?
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. I mean, just as a Cardinals fan, I'm thinking like they're not very fun to watch right now.
Well, speaking of the Cardinals,
Jordan Walker and Mason Wynn's coming.
Yes.
Yeah, and I saw you put Adam Wainwright on the rundown for today's show, and did he retire mid-start last night?
Well, he didn't retire.
Is that why you have him on here?
He didn't retire very many hitters, unfortunately. Adam Wainwright went 1 inning and allowed 8 runs, gave up 2 homers. Drew, his ERA is to 8.78. And I just wonder, like, obviously, we're not talking about using Adam Wainwright for fantasy ever again. Should the Cardinals start Adam Wainwright anymore? Has he earned the right that he gets to be in this rotation right now for this terrible baseball team? And I'm sorry that I have to say that. But, like, should Adam Wainwright continue pitching?
I mean, earned is a strong word. He's making $17.5 million for some
Okay,
reason.
that's fair.
So I
That's
guess
fair.
in that regard, he's earned the rotation spot. No, he's not a major league starter right now. But the Cardinals aren't playing for anything. He needs 2 more wins to get to 200 for his career. That's the goal. He's going to stay in the rotation, and they're going to hope that he can somehow like make it 5 innings in a start. But when the Royals batter you like that, and I mean, he's been battered by every team he's faced pretty much this year. I don't know. He's not a major league starter. They're like just sitting on his breaking stuff and feasting
Yeah.
on it, and he doesn't have nearly enough velocity to like sneak fastballs by any hitters. If I was watching the Cardinals at all in recent weeks, it would be tough to watch, but I've been working on some other hobbies.
There you go. I totally
I've been
understand,
watching
man.
other teams. I've been watching the Orioles mainly.
There you go. That's so though. Just be careful if you say anything negative about the Orioles because you might get suspended for goodness gracious, what a silly
I
situation.
feel like there's more to that story. I don't. Okay.
I don't. I know.
Just the Angeloses are that
They're
insecure, and
they're that petty, my friend. They are that petty, and I think that there's a reason why they made Kevin Brown come out and say some comments about that situation. Yep, that was a definitely interesting little story. By the way, tonight Felix Hernandez is getting inducted into the Mariner Hall of Fame against the Baltimore Orioles, and that makes me feel old as heck, Drew. That really does, because it doesn't seem like that long ago that Felix Hernandez was one of the best pitchers in baseball, but it has been a little while. Crazy, though, that Felix Hernandez, the fantasy ace of fantasy aces, going in the Hall of Fame tonight.
yeah, I mean, I think he's younger than me.
Yeah.
What is he like 35, 36? I'm 36.
He's born in 87, so I think he just turned
I was
37.
born in 87.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
83.
When do I go into the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, well, got to pay your dues in order to do that, Drew.
Yeah,
we're gonna get into the hittier category overview, but first, let's take a quick commercial break. We know the weather can impact how far a ball can fly, but we never know what all that heat and humidity or cold air is really doing to the ball. The Home Run Forecast Index gives us an easy way to determine how good or bad the air is for ball flight. The index is calculated by measuring stadium-specific weather conditions and is displayed on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being the most unfavorable for good ball flight and 10 indicating the most favorable air. There is a strong correlation between the index and the number of runs scored per game and the number of home runs hit. Games that have that highest index of 10 for the whole game average over 10 runs and 2.8 homers over the course of the year. An index is created for each game, so you can see what it will be in any stadium and how the weather's influence might change over the course of the game, as well as the wind direction. Right now, you can get access to the HRF Premium site for only $5 a month and see what the index will look like for every hour of every game. Go to homerunforecast.com now to sign up. All right, let's get into that hitter category overview, Drew. And why don't you start us off with a cat player that might be a little sneaky add to help in the average category? But you probably need to be unmuted in order to talk about the average.
I'm back.
Category. Hey, buddy, how's it going?
Let's run through the top 10 first at each of these categories. So for what are we doing first? Batting average, yeah.
Yes.
Luis Arias, is at 366. Freddie Freeman, 344. Ronald Acuna, 338. Bo Bichette, Yandy Diaz, Josh Naylor up there, hurt right now. Shohei Ohtani, Bryson Stott, Masataka Yoshida having a great rookie year, and then Whit Merrifield kind of pulling off that Toronto renaissance that some people projected him for. My sneaky option who can help in batting average down the stretch is Wilmer Flores, who is right now hitting third for a Giants team that might be fading a bit, but is very much in the National League wild card hunt. It's going to be a wild finish as to who claims those wild card spots on the NL side. I mean, like lock in the Phillies, but then it's like a glob of Giants, Brewers, Cubs, Marlins, Reds, Padres, Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks losing streak has now grown to 9, which is brutal. But
yeah,
props to the Giants and props to Wilmer Flores. He's always been a little bit underrated. Doesn't have the kind of raw power that you'd want from a corner infield DH type of player, but he's batting .302 with an .898 OPS through 297 plate appearances this season. Over his last 108 plate appearances, going back to before the All-Star break, he has a .384 batting average and an 1113 OPS, 7 homers, 9 doubles in that 27 game span. There's a bit of luck in his batted ball data, but not as much as some other players who are showing a high batting average over the last month, because he's not a speed demon. Like, he doesn't get the BABIP help in that regard.
right.
Just generally making good contact and feasting on chances in a really good lineup spot with a team that is still competing. Maybe you can't count on like the recent home run pace being sustained, but I think Wilmer Flores will continue to rattle off hits and RBIs and runs scored to stay relevant and useful in most fantasy leagues. He's pretty much available everywhere. If you need to make up some ground and average and get a little help in some other categories too, I think he's a fine pickup.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. And he certainly qualifies, I think, as underrated. He's not one of those players that you're really thinking about in terms of, fantasy superstardom. I'm going to go with Alec Bohm, who has been really good, especially as of late. Over the last 13 games, and the stats just went away, but I know he's hitting .352 over his last 13 games, which is good. And we have seen flashes of this from Bohm before, and we have often seen them quickly dissipate, like just go away real quick. He has not shown much consistency outside of that run that he had in his rookie season in the truncated year. Hard hit percentage in the 63rd percentile, but the expected batting average is in the 89th. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he just doesn't really strike out. You look at him and he's a 6'5", listed at 218. I'm guessing it's more than 218, Drew. I would guess 220, 230. He's kind of built like that boy. Power hitting guy, but you take a look and it's more about that contact. And yeah, he hits the ball on the ground a lot, but if you make contact, you have a chance to hit for average. He's now hitting 290 on the season. The 437 slugging percentage is definitely disappointing. It's not the profile that I saw when he was at Wichita State, and he was very deserving of being the 3rd overall pick. But if you're looking for a guy to help you at that average category who should be available in a lot of leagues, Alec Bohm makes a lot of sense in that corner infield spot.
He continues to struggle to hit for power against righties, which is like a problem because most pitchers are right-handed. But
yes,
like the batting average and OBP this year versus righties has shown a lot of improvement from where it was. Like, I don't know, if you see in a guy's profile that he struggles against righties, that's a problem. But that he's made some strides in that department, at least like making better contact, not hitting many balls over the fence, but just making better contact in general. And he absolutely feasts against lefties.
Yes.
So certainly anytime Bohm and the Phillies are facing a lefty, you want him in a fantasy lineup. If you play in those kind of daily lineup leagues, he is a great guy to have. Let's move over to runs scored, which is obviously kind of a weird category, somewhat teammate dependent. But you look at the leaderboard right now, Ronald Acuna already has 103 runs as the leadoff man in Atlanta. Freddie Freeman, 101. Mookie Betts, 94. Marcus Semien, 93. Ohtani is just crazy as he's on every one of these leaderboards and on the pitching ones too. Matt Olson, Adolis Garcia, Austin Riley, Christian Yelich, which is kind of nice to see. And then Corbin Carroll to round things out. Lane Thomas sitting there at 11th too.
Yeah.
Former Cardinal. My kind of under the radar play is going to be Sal Frelick, who is only rostered at 35% in Yahoo leagues right now, despite a terrific start to his major league career in Milwaukee. Through his first 19 big league games, a .934 OPS, 3 homers, 2 steals, 15 RBIs, and 15 runs scored. He had a single, drew 2 walks, stole a base, and scored a run in the Brewers' win over the White Sox on Friday, hitting cleanup. We talked about Frelick when the Brewers first called him up. I didn't have super high expectations. His numbers in the minors weren't great this year. He needed surgery in April to
Yeah,
repair a torn ulnar collateral ligament in his left thumb, and just never kind of really got it going with AAA Nashville. But the minor league numbers before this year were excellent. He sure looks like he belongs already
yeah,
in the bigs, consistently climbing up the Brewers batting order. If he stays at cleanup, like the RBI upside is obvious too. I wouldn't mind him hitting leadoff or second. He's a really
sure.
polished hitter. I love when you see a young player with more walks than strikeouts, and that's what he's kind of posted throughout his professional career, getting on
Yes,
base and delivering help in the runs scored category, pretty much every category for a Brewers team that currently has a 2.5 game lead on first place in the National League Central standings. Frelick is like breaking some of Paul Molitor's franchise record for most RBIs and runs scored to begin a career. It seems like every night he surpasses a new Paul Molitor franchise record. Just really promising stuff for him to get his feet wet here in 2023, and with Jackson Churio knocking on the door leading into 2024.
Paul Molitor was so good. Like
Yeah, he was.
I sometimes stare at his batting stats. Him and Robin Yount, man, the Brewers that would have been a fun video game team to play back in the day, to have Yount and Molitor and a few of those other guys, BJ Surhoff and whatnot. But yeah, look, I mean, we kind of argued about it. We don't really argue about very much, but like we talked about it. I was all in on, not all in on Frelick, but I was saying that there's a lot to like about this guy, and it's so weird seeing him hit in the cleanup spot, and because that's just not the profile you think of. But it's also, Craig Counsell is a very forward-thinking guy for most of this stuff, and is willing to move stuff around, and he makes sense there, and it's working out just fine. I'm going to go with another NL Central guy. I was not all in on this guy, Mike Tauchman. He's been fantastic, and he's hitting at the top of the lineup right now for a resurgent, is an understatement, Chicago Cubs team. Over the last 25 games, Tauchman is hitting 358, 436, 605, and in those 25 games, he has scored 19 runs. And the big thing here is he's hitting in that leadoff spot quite a bit, and he's getting a chance to be driven in by, I don't think we've talked enough about how good Cody Bellinger has been in 2023. I know we haven't done it anyway. I don't know if we've even mentioned Cody Bellinger on these shows that we've done together, Drew, but he's been absolutely fantastic, and Ian Happ as well. There's a lot to like about that, and he's going to stick, I think, at the top of that lineup for the majority of these games, and he's going to be in the lineup because he is an outstanding defensive player as well. It's very nice to have that combination. He gets on base, he scores runs. It wouldn't shock me a ton if there's a major amount of regression coming, because I think he's played for 32 of 30 MLB teams at this point. There's a reason why he's been a journeyman and then some. But right now, if you're looking at the hot hand and you play in like a 4 outfielder, 5 outfielder type of thing, I think Mike Tauchman makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, they've sat him sometimes against lefties, but for the most part, he's been an everyday player for the Cubs.
Strong side of the platoon at the very least.
Yeah. And they kept the band together at the trade deadline, and they've got a real chance to win the National League Central, or possibly even get a wild card spot. And Tauchman's been a big part of that. Like, wherever they want to play him, he could even rotate in at DH. They're kind of using Christopher Morel in that spot right now, but they can put Cody Bellinger at first base. There are ways for Tauchman to continue getting something close to everyday playing time and to be productive with that playing time. Let's move over to home runs. The leaderboard right now there, Shohei Ohtani and Matt Olson are tied with 40 apiece. Pete Alonso, 35. Mookie Betts has 31. Luis Robert has 31. Kyle Schwarber has 30. Adolis Garcia, Max Muncy, Jorge Soler for the Marlins, Austin Riley, and Acuna makes another top 10 leaderboard. My under the radar option here to help in home runs down the stretch is going to be Chas McCormick.
Like that.
He's been held out of the Astros starting lineup the last 2 games because of a bruised knee, but he did come off the bench and hit a single in Houston's win over the Angels on Friday. So that injury doesn't seem like a concern at all. McCormick had to really fight for playing time in the first half of the season. He was out of the lineup too often to be a valuable fantasy outfielder, but since the end of June, the playing time has come more steadily, and he's batting .321 with a 1048 OPS 8 homers, 26 RBIs, 22 runs scored in 31 games. He has 7 homers in his last 22 games. He has 2 different multi-homer games in that span, in that 3-week span. There's some more obvious names that are hitting homers right now, but McCormick is still available in about 40% of Yahoo leagues, offers some steals too. Corey Julks is out of the picture, optioned back to AAA Sugarland after like a hitless streak that went on for, I think, over 50 plate appearances. He didn't have a hit, Julks. McCormick should play pretty much every day down the stretch and offer category spanning production. Like, you look at his rolling XW OBA chart at Baseball Savant, it's a really promising upward pointing trend. It seems to take years and years for Dusty Baker to move certain hitters up his lineup, looking at you, Kyle Tucker, but McCormick has hit 5th a couple times recently, so that's really encouraging. It seems like Dusty Baker trusts him. I like the whole package of what he can be, and he's, again, available in a lot of leagues right now. I think he's going to continue to be productive down the stretch. The Astros are things are coming together for them at the right time. That's going to be a race in the AL West down the stretch between them and the Rangers.
I like that you mentioned the multi-category thing, because Drew, when we were putting this list together, he was going to be the guy I put at the run category, sleeper. And then I saw you stole him from me, and then I cursed your family. And, that's just the way things work around here. But no, that's a great call. And it's worth pointing out McCormick dealt with some injury stuff early on too, which is part of the reason why he was struggling to get in the lineup. I believe it was a neck thing with him. The Astros are kind of weird with injuries. You either really know what's going on or you have no idea what's going on. Dusty can play things.
I have a question about that. Because I mean, you and I, what we do, we're on Twitter all the time.
Yep, unfortunately.
The Astros are the only team that seems to be allowed to operate where they're really cagey with injury information.
It's very odd, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really get it. And of all teams to play fast and loose with rules, the Houston Astros is the team that's doing that. It's a very odd situation. This is not us being anti-Astros, by the way. I'm just confused by it. It's very odd.
Why did they get away with it?
They do seem to get away with it a lot more. Maybe they're doing it better than everybody else. Maybe they've taken the thing out of college football's book, because go ask a college football coach about injuries and see what happens.
Dusty Baker reminds me of an SEC coach sometimes.
He definitely does. He definitely does.
They'll ask him how's Yordan Alvarez's wrist? He's like, well, he has one. And that's it. All right.
It is frustrating for our job though, just because it's what are we supposed to do here? It's very, all we can write is, still no update, still no real update. Wait and see day to day. We're all day to day, Drew, every single one of us. So those of you who know me well know that I talked up Big Dumper an awful lot. And those of you who are unfamiliar with Big Dumper, we're talking about Cal Raleigh. He got off to a pretty slow start. It's not slow anymore. Over the last 30 games, he has hit 9 homers. He is slugging .628. And he's also hitting in the cleanup spot, which is a reason why I considered mentioning him as an RBI guy. There's a good chance Cal Raleigh is rostered in your league, but if you're one of those people who is playing and Cal Raleigh isn't one of the 12 catchers rostered and you have a good catcher, I'd be willing to put Cal Raleigh in my utility spot right now, because he is having the same second half that he had last year. And folks, if you didn't remember, Cal Raleigh was as good, if not better, than pretty much any catcher in baseball over that second half. He's going to hurt you a little bit in average because he's so willing to hit in 2 strike counts, but that power is legit. He absolutely scorched a home run off a completely ineffective Kyle Gibson last night. By the way, another huge game for Julio, which was nice to see as well. He's good. It's been very fun as a Seattle Mariner fan to watch this, but Big Dumper is dumping him over the fence right now. And if he's still available in your league, he has that chance to make you from that 10 spot to that 6 spot, just because he has that good of run going. And we have seen him now do this 2 straight years where when he's locked in that power category, he's awfully tough to get out.
It's nice that he cycles in at DH too. You kind of need that from a fantasy catcher.
Yes.
I've in this one team that I'm this one league that I'm leading right now, I have Francisco Alvarez as my catcher. I don't carry a second catcher. It's not like deep rosters. And he just sits too often. I wish they would the Mets would cycle him at DH sometimes. It's like very valuable to have that with your fantasy catcher. Cal Raleigh should definitely be rostered everywhere because of that, and I mean the production, obviously.
Also, Big Dumper. Please
yeah.
mention it, Big Dumper, at least once when you're talking about him.
Big Dumper.
Thank you, sir.
Wow. Let's move over to RBIs.
Yeah.
Let me pull up this leaderboard. Big Dumper.
Thank you.
Matt Olson, not Big Dumper, is number one at 101 RBIs already through 115 games. Adolis Garcia, Pete Alonso, Ozzie Albies. Nice to see him up on that high on that list. Kyle Tucker, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, of course, Nolan Arenado, Rafael Devers, Josh Naylor, Mookie Betts, JD Martinez, Max Muncy, Juan Soto, Alec Baum right there. He's somehow always like happens into RBIs too for not being like a great power hitter, you know?
Right.
I'm going with Kerry Carpenter here. Digging a little deep for this one. He's available in 87% of Yahoo leagues, and it's understandable that people aren't paying much attention to the Tigers offense right now, but he has been on fire. Since returning from a shoulder strain back in early June, Carpenter has batted .301 with an .855 OPS over 194 plate appearances, 9 homers, 31 RBIs in 53 games. The line looks even better the more you shrink it to what's just occurred since the All-Star break. 18 RBIs in his last 26 games. He homered Friday in Boston, as we mentioned earlier, hit that homer off Chris Sale to break up the no-hitter bid, and is currently working on an 8-game hitting streak. It's kind of just all coming together for him at age 25. He was a 19th round pick in 2019 out of Virginia Tech. Not a ton of prospect fanfare initially, but he broke out last summer between AA Erie and AAA Toledo with a .313 average, 1025 OPS, 30 home runs, and 75 RBIs in 98 games, which led him to making his major league debut with the Tigers last August. And, you know, the Tigers need one of these types to flourish, the non-prospects that they develop into productive major league hitters. You hope that Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson wind up having great careers, but it's often like the collective of diamonds in the rough that get you out of rebuilding mode. It's, you know, look at the Orioles. I mean, there's plenty of examples of it. Look at the Reds. Like sometimes it takes a little while, and you happen into some luck with a guy like Kerry Carpenter. And the numbers to me say that I don't know if he's like a superstar, but where he's hitting right now in their lineup and what he's done over, you know, a sample size that spans multiple months, I think he's going to continue to be a nice source of RBIs down the stretch for a guy who is available pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, that's a great call. I think he's been really underrated what he's done so far this year. Did notice him hitting a couple of home runs not that long ago against my Seattle Mariners. I think 3 in 2 games. He definitely has pop. It's funny you bring up Riley Green, by the way, another guy that I don't think we've talked enough about. I know he's dealt with some injury stuff, but like you take a look at that Baseball Savant page, there's so much in the 90th percentile. I think he has a chance to be a star, but I think you bring up a good point. Yeah, it's great to have those guys, but you need those guys that come out of nowhere, similar to what we were talking about with Cal Raleigh, like not a guy that was super hyped, but has become a pretty integral part of what Seattle is building. I think Kerry Carpenter, if this goes right for the Tigers, has a chance to be that guy. And if not, in fantasy circles, at least, he does have a chance to drive in some runs because of where he's hitting. I think we've gone like same division for the majority of these. I'm going to stick in the AL Central, and I want to talk about Ryan Jeffers, who was a player who
I wanted to put him somewhere too. Yeah. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I was going to either put Raleigh in the RBI category and Jeffers in the homers, or vice versa. But they're both guys that I don't think have to just be catchers right now. Over the last 17 games, Jeffers has driven in 14 runs, including a 4 RBI game and a 3 RBI game. This was a guy who kind of looked like a thing not that long ago and fell way down and was completely kind of, everybody thought Christian Vasquez was going to be the answer at catcher for these guys, you know, and get most of the reps. Not that Christian Vasquez has ever been a great fantasy option, but it was certainly going to make Jeffers pretty much just a backup. But he's not only not a backup right now, he's hitting in the middle of the order. And that's what excites me about him. He's hitting 284, 379, 495. Those are outstanding numbers for any position, much less the catcher position. I don't think he's gotten nearly enough hype still available in a lot of leagues. And I don't think he's someone you just have to have as your catcher. He's somebody who I think can drive in enough runs and provide enough power for a pretty darn good Minnesota lineup that scores a lot of runs and hits the ball over the fence a lot. Jeffers has a chance to hit the ball over the fence and drive in some guys. And yeah, I think Ryan Jeffers is absolutely underrated right now as a fantasy option.
He's been cycling in at DH too, and you love to see that hit cleanup on Friday. Love to see that for any catcher. I think definitely if you need a little upgrade at the catcher position, Jeffers should play a lot down the stretch and be really productive. You got to kind of stream catchers at this point in the season if the guy you have is not getting it done.
Great point.
Let's move over to stolen bases. This is our final category. What does that leaderboard look like right now? Ronald Acuna, of course, leading the way with 54. Esteri Ruiz with 46. I'm going to have a ton of Riley Green shares in 2024, by the way. I think because of the injuries, it's going to go like unnoticed what he's been doing from like a batted ball data standpoint. Anyway, so Acuna, Ruiz, Corbin Carroll has 36. Bobby Witt has 34 to go along with his 21 homers. Wander Franco is at 30 steals. Willie Castro, another Twins standout, has 29. Nico Horner, CJ Abrams, Ha-Seong Kim, who has been playing amazing ball lately, has 27. Julio Rodriguez also with 27. Then you get down to like Jake McCarthy, Jorge Mateo, Starling Marte, Kyle Tucker, Christian Yelich, Jarren Duran. My sneaker here is going to be Zach Geloff, and Geloff could apply to any one of these categories. He's been absolutely awesome since the A's called him up right after the All-Star break. 6 homers, 6 steals through his first 23 Major League games. He has an extra base hit in 14 of his first 23 Major League games. It's been like you can play with the stats a bit, and he's been setting records, like more homers to begin his Major League career than former A's greats Jose Canseco, Yoenis Cespedes, Matt Chapman, Sean Murphy, who all had only 5 homers through their first 23 games. Prior to his call-up, Geloff was batting .304 with a .929 OPS, 12 homers and 20 steals in 69 games this summer for AAA Las Vegas. A second-round pick in 2021 out of the University of Virginia, a Delaware native. Chris, can you name the best Delaware native in baseball history? It's a little unfair because this player moved to Houston, the Houston area as a kid, and is more associated with that area. But he's active right now. Plays for the team I tend to root for, America's first baseman.
Oh yeah, it's Paul Goldschmidt. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I knew that because there was a conversation on Twitter talking about people from Delaware, and it was like Joe Biden, Audrey Plaza, and Paul Goldschmidt were the 3.
Well, but I mean, like, I don't know why I got on this little tangent, but just as I was digging into like Zach Geloff, I was watching some interviews with him.
Yeah.
I mean, there just aren't many Delawareites.
That's what we're calling them now.
MLB history, like Joey Wendell is from Delaware, Delino DeShields Sr., Chad Kuhl, and then like a whole lot of old timers. Geloff by wins above replacement is already top 20 all time for Major League players born in Delaware. I don't know what I'm on this about, but I just found it interesting as I was digging into his.
It's much more interesting, but, than anything else we've talked about today.
Delaware. Yeah. That power speed combo, though, that like every fantasy manager is chasing. Geloff plays really good defense at second base too, and again, he has like a really good personality. If you've seen him in interviews, tenacious young dude. Everything that the A's could want, that their fans deserve. Could be like a real face of the franchise type of player as they move to Las Vegas. I don't know. He'll come back down to earth a little bit, probably down the stretch this season, because he's on a 40-40 pace.
Yes.
With what he's done in his first 23 games. But I'll be interested to see what the projections are for Geloff going into 2024, where he goes in drafts. Like, he's very under rostered right now, but I don't think he'll be a sleeper at all if he finishes even semi-strong in 2023. We could use some new blood at second base as fantasy managers and fantasy analysts. And maybe Geloff is like a 20 homer, 30 steal kind of guy in that range over a full season, which we'll take. I really like what we've seen so far. I think he's legit.
Yeah, Oakland fans deserve to see some glimmer of hope. And, unfortunately, that glimmer of hope is going to be moving about 700 miles east, unfortunately, not too long from now. But Geloff has been good, and it's been encouraging because he was somebody I really liked out of the University of Virginia and has definitely held his own. I was tempted to just say everybody for stolen bases. Like, this is just so fun. I'm going to go with Daron Blanco, who I don't think a lot of people even maybe have heard of at this point, but he is running. Over the last 30 games, he has stolen 9 bases in 11 attempts. He has 14 steals in 38 games. Look, this is a one category player. He's not going to help you in average. He has never hit a home run. I don't think he ever will. He's 30 years old in his first full season, and it's not that full because he's played 38 games. But he's running, and I'll say this, target, if you're looking for steals, target Kansas City, because they are going to run. They are a team that is, once they are on base, they are going to go. But Blanco is getting a lot of those opportunities. He's playing pretty much every day. He stole 2 bases against the Cardinals on Friday. I imagine he'll get a chance to steal some bases as well, playing on Saturday and Sunday. If you're talking real deep league and he can take the hit and the power, because there's just none whatsoever, target Daron Blanco to give you some steals to help you out.
I like it.
Yeah. That's Daron Blanco. And always knew we would be talking about Daron Blanco on August 12th. Drew, congratulations, buddy. The streak is over. You have finally won a Sunday streamer. Adonis Medina. He pitched like Adonis Medina. Unfortunately, in the last time I called him, Luis Medina was not very good. I don't even remember who you had, but it was Xavier Curry. That's right. And Curry did. It wasn't superb, but he was certainly better. I think there's actually some really interesting ones, but since you finally won, why don't you talk about a pitcher with a really good last name?
Hunter Crawford,
Yes.
32% rostered on Yahoo. This is a fair one, right? This is a streamer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's an easy choice. I mean, Jamison Tyone has been incredible lately too. He's going up against the Blue Jays, but his roster percentage has shot way up, which it should, because he's really turned it around. So Crawford gets the Tigers at home in Fenway Park on Sunday. I don't know. What did I say here? If you throw out his rough season debut from back in early April, he has a 3.21 ERA, 81 strikeouts, only 19 walks in 81 and a third innings. That's just if you remove one start from back on April 3rd. Detroit ranks 29th in combined team OPS, almost got no hit on Friday until Kerry Carpenter came through. The Tigers are only leading the A's in terms of combined team OPS, and that's the kind of offense you want to face. And Crawford's been really good and has a great last name.
Yes, he is that's
my pitch.
That's a good pitch. I'm going to make a recommendation that a lot of you are going to laugh at, and it might end up being something to laugh at. I'd take the chance on Brandon Pfaadt, and it's partially because, look,
sure,
San Diego, you've got some star power in there. That lineup's not good. They are not a good offensive baseball team. Outside of those big 3 and Luis Campusano, who has been playing a lot better as of late, it's not a great offensive team, I think. And if you take a look at just Pfaadt's numbers, they're pretty bad, but this is a former top prospect, like better than former top prospect, legitimately one of the best pitching prospects in baseball, who just hasn't quite gotten it done. But there have been some real signs. He had 6 innings of shutout baseball against the Reds until he gave up back-to-back homers in that joke of a park. Didn't pitch well in the last one, but pitched well in the one before that. Arizona's just also, they're clearly not a postseason team. I think now we can agree in 2023, but they're better than this.
Yeah.
They are due to start getting some win chances. If you're desperate, and I do think you probably have to be in that desperate type of situation, I'm willing to give Brandon Pfaadt a shot, but I'll be honest, if I was going to go between the two, I think Hunter Crawford's a really good call.
Yeah, Pfaadt had that really good start at the Giants last week.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of gave it back up against the Dodgers, but the Dodgers make any pitcher look bad. We've talked about Pfaadt before. I'm not really super impressed. Fair. I mean, like, his minor league numbers jump out at you, but he's not really passing the eye test as like maybe like a mid-rotation starter, but I'm not
Yes.
really seeing like ace type stuff there.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think that the minor league numbers got extremely overrated. I think Drew, I've talked to you ad nauseum about the fact that guys who miss bats with deception in the minors, it doesn't always carry over into the major leagues. And we're talking about Fat has 4 above average pitches. Like it's not like he's just like guessing and hoping that pinpoint command is going to get the job done.
True, yep.
But he doesn't have that true out pitch, which is the reason why I'm scared about, not scared might be the wrong word, but I'm not projecting him to be a future ace unless one of those pitches becomes plus on the 20/80 scouting scale or 70, a big increase in velocity, something like that, which is not unheard of. We certainly see that happen in baseball quite a bit, but it's hard to project. But yeah, I do think Fott is more of a mid-rotation guy, but I wouldn't just completely give up on him based on what we've seen. We have certainly seen pitchers struggle early on in their major league career and end up doing pretty darn well. Arizona's done okay with player development. I think they make Zach Gallen better. They made Merrill Kelly better. I think Brandon Pfaadt is on not the Gallen trajectory, but maybe on that Merrill Kelly trajectory. There is certainly use in that. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks so much for listening to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Follow us on whatever the heck they call it now. I'm at Crawford_MILB. Drew is at Drew Silva. Rate and review the show if you like what you're hearing, and hit that subscribe button as well. We really appreciate it. And don't forget, new episodes every single day of the week. I'm going to be on Thursday, by the way. I'll be back on Sunday, of course, with my buddy Ryan Boyer, but I'm going to have the great Alex Coffey on to talk about the Philadelphia Phillies. That'll be a lot of fun. She's the best, and the Phillies have just a ton of fun stories. I told her she's got to write a book. Like to get that beat the year before everything has happened with Philadelphia, she can write a book and she could make an awful lot of money. Thanks again, folks, and we'll